All right, everybody, welcome to the Unscripted podcast, Unscripted One-on-One with my guy, Curt Harding today. It is unscripted, but as I just told him, some of you are going to see this on video, some of you might be listening to the podcast, but it is unscripted. But honestly, I needed a teleprompter today because, and honestly, it may take 30 minutes for me to introduce Mr. Harding because he's got so many things. So let me run through this real quick before I turn it over to you, and then you can introduce yourself. But so he is a writer, speaker, storyteller, author, reporter, producer, publicist, 80s music fan, Huey Lewis fan, husband, girl dad to twins. Did I get it all?
You got it all. You got it all.
All right. Well, let me turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, great. First of all, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I've known Aaron for a long time, and he's the coolest dude ever. I think I liked you about probably 37 seconds after I met you. So that's awesome. But I think you covered it all. As long as you got the girls in there and Huey Lewis, I mean, what else is there?
That's it, honestly, really. And we'll get to 80s music at the end. I plan on that. We'll rip it up at the end on some 80s music. But true fact, we came within a minute of moving to Nashville, as you know, a phone call away. We were so close to moving to Nashville. And it's funny because I just wrapped up another call with somebody and we came within a minute of moving to Charlotte. So we've got this whole moving thing going on, but yet we're still in Columbus. But that being said, one of the main reasons we didn't move to Nashville was I think people would think that you and I were Right Said Fred.
That's very true, and we're too sexy for anything around here. So I think it was a good move.
Most people watching or listening are probably Googling Right Said Fred.
So. They're like, did he say Right Said Fred? Well, how do you spell that?
And I'm not cool enough to be able to splice that in, like Barstool Sports kind of stuff. I wish I could, but later as this thing develops and I have better tools. But
sure.
Anyway, how did we meet? Just for our audience, I honestly don't remember. How did you and I meet? Is it Dave Schrader? I think may have been the connecting point.
I think it may have been, yeah. And I honestly don't remember the day or the circumstances. I think it had something to do with the marathon that's in,
right.
Is it Nashville Marathon?
Right. It was a half. Right.
But. Okay, it was a half. You ran it, I didn't. And then I think we all met up at dinner, and that's when I was introduced to you. So you and your lovely wife, and it was great.
Right. We had a great night. And that was about 40 pounds ago. So
yeah, well, okay, great. So
thank you, COVID. No, so let's start off, man. I first of all, and again, this is unscripted, so who knows where this will go. But one of the things I am fascinated and continue to just be so blown away by with you is you are so positive, man. In a world of constant negativity. And I listed all the accolades and all the things and titles that you have. But one of the things that we've stayed connected on over all these years is social media. And you're an incredible writer. And I'm so blessed, honestly. Every time you put something out into the world, it's a positive thing. And the world needs more of that. So talk to me about storytelling and, where do you find your inspiration? How do you're obviously, you have that passion and gift to be a writer, and you do it so well. So where do you find that? And just talk to me a little bit about storytelling, because you're so good at it.
No, thank you. Well, I don't know who I heard this quote from, and we can look it up later, but someone had a quote that said that it's impossible to hate somebody if you take the time to hear their story. So I think that as I developed writing, and I've been a writer for a while, I used to write for television news and radio news. And so I did the news stuff back when I had anchor hair. But then when blogging became a thing and I started blogging, I've even looked back at when I began, and I wasn't really telling stories. I was just trying to dazzle you with my sentences. But you have to find your way, and humble beginnings are okay. But I think slowly I started developing that back to that quote that it's impossible to hate someone. And you can even go back a little further than that. It's impossible to even blow people off or act like they don't exist or be in your own world. It just opens up your world so much more when you tell stories. And just as I've gotten older, I think when I went into my late 40s and early 50s, it just became a thing with me that there's so much noise out there and so much negativity, that why don't we just tell stories and see if we can find some sort of connection there? And it has opened up worlds that I never knew existed, just from telling stories, just meeting people and having people, feedback. When you get that kind of feedback, you're like, I can't believe that one person was touched by this that much, and that makes it all worth it.
Absolutely. I agree. And as you know, I put my blog on ice for a long time, and I've missed that.
Yeah.
Yourself. I mean, we met because of Dave Schrader, whom I met because of my blog, because and I think
Wow.
it's amazing when you step into those opportunities and something as simple as a blog. And I think blogging is somewhat archaic now. It seems like it's maybe going away, or it's not as cool as it used to be, or whatever that might be. It still has value, and it's still, look, if a guy like you and a guy like myself can connect because of our blogs, man, it's worth it. Like you said, it's worth putting out. Absolutely.
Yeah. And a couple of years ago, I decided to just stop looking at numbers too. There was a time where I was like, hey, I wonder how many people are reading this. And I tried to get algorithms, and I tried to, and that was a mistake, because it actually changed the way I wrote. I was trying to write to get attention, or, if something didn't hit as much, wow, I guess I didn't hit the mark on that. Maybe I could have written the sentence better, and I forgot all of that. And I just said, just write what you feel, what you're experiencing, keeping those principles that you already have in mind, which is storytelling and how this can affect one person. It doesn't matter how many people are reading it. It really doesn't. You're putting it out in the world. You're being creative. You're doing what God intended you to do.
Yeah. Man, that's so true. And especially anyone that has not blogged, or those that have blogged, will absolutely agree with you. It's the one that you think is going to hit the grand slam that fails miserably. It's the one that you think is so stupid, but you're just filling a space because you figure people are waiting on another one from you, that blows up. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah. And of course, the most touching moments are when it actually changes somebody. Last week, or a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a blog about a funeral I attended. And the funeral was an ice cream social. Apparently, this woman's biggest wish was, when she passes away, just serve ice cream and talk and be together. And I walked into this room and I could not believe, first of all, the amount of ice cream. And second of all, just the way people did connect. I mean, even in the middle of the virus, there were people connecting in different ways and talking and laughing about her. And so I wrote that one, and, it was just basically moderate response. Until someone I went to high school with emailed me and said, hey, my dad passed away a couple of weeks ago, and because of your blog, we served ice cream.
Wow.
And that, it's that like hits, right away, I said, I don't care if anybody else read it. She read it, and she acted. How cool is that?
Yeah. I agree. I went to a high school reunion. I won't mention the number, but I went to a high school reunion a few years ago. We've since had like one or two more. But honestly, I walked in and people are walking up to me that I haven't seen since high school, and they're telling me, man, I follow you. I read this, I read that. And again, mine has not been as active. But at the time, I'm like, wow, I mean, I didn't think anybody read this. And like you said, I think when you first start, you are a stat watcher and you're a number watcher, and you're it's almost like the stocks. You live and die by how your numbers were the day before. And then I think you do reach a point for most people. Now, some people are in this for the business, and I've never been in for that. And I know you're not either. It's just more or less, let me just change the world as much as I can with my little circle of influence. And it's powerful when people come up and say, man, that thing you wrote, and they quote something you wrote, like, and I'll talk about this in a minute. You've actually put books out into this space, but I've never done that. But for somebody to quote you, you're like, man, I like wrote that in the middle of the night in my pajamas. I couldn't sleep, and I thought I'd throw this out there. That's powerful. So storytelling we need more of that in the world, and we need less noise and more stories, because there's great stories.
Absolutely.
So speaking of stories, talk about Tale of Two Kitties, because it's awesome. My girls loved that book, and we still we still have it. So talk about Tale of Two Kitties.
Well, I learned a lot of lessons on this book. It was a children's book, and it sat on my computer for probably 6 years, and I'd keep going back to it going, wow, I feel like I have something here, but, just didn't put the time into it. And it really just, when it was finally finished and actually became a book, it really taught me that why did I wait so long? Like, I let those voices of you're not good and you shouldn't write and you're not an author. And
Yeah.
I let all those voices in. And, the biggest lesson I learned from that is if you've got a book or if you've got an idea, just get it out there, write it, and ask for help if it's not perfect. There's so many people that will come forward and help you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a book. It's already 10 years old, which is amazing.
Wow.
My girls were 10 and now they're 20.
Yeah.
And so, and the bad part about waiting to finish it too is even when they were 10, they were like, oh, this is cute, but it would have been better for them when they were like 6 or 7,
Yeah.
they were like, so when are you going to write Harry Potter?
Right.
Like, hey kid, don't push it.
That's right. Absolutely.
But it was a fun project, and I will do more of that.
Well, I love it. And again, this is unscripted. So, but anybody, and before we get off of here and before, when I put the post up, I'll have the links for everything that we talk about, because I do want I'd love for people, especially people with young kids. It's a great book. It's just fun. And it's the art, the color, the artwork, everything's awesome. It's my girls absolutely love that book. So
yeah, great.
And we'll circle back to Girl Dad, because that's before we get off of here for sure. But, I wanted to ask you about working for Dave Ramsey. Number one, I've heard it's the greatest. It's always in the top 5 places to work in Nashville. And I will preface it with I'm going to run through the story as quick as I can. But when I was single, before I got married, I ran up debt to the tune of, and I'm going to tell this to the world. And I think I wrote a blog post, ironically enough, about it that did very well one time, without the intention of doing it. I think I was just cleansing myself. But $30,000 in debt. And it was literally credit card after credit card. They got me. I would the next one would come in the mail and say, hey, pay off all your credit cards at 0 interest. And I'm like, okay, I'll pay off all those. But I never got rid of the old ones. And before you knew it, that one was up to 5. And then before you knew it, I was up to my ears in debt. I had purchased a car, and one of my roommates at the time had a Grand Am, and I'm like, I want a Grand Am now. So I went to the Grand Am dealer, and I walked in, and they said, oh yeah, we can sell you a Grand Am, not a problem at all. Well, I learned the lesson of negative equity, because I owed more on the one that I had brought in, blah, blah, blah. And then, maybe a year or so went by, and I wanted a Pathfinder. And so I went to Bedford Nissan in Bedford, Ohio, and I walked in and I test drove it. And I had convinced myself I'm going to buy this. And I sat down with the finance manager of all people, and he said, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to hand you your keys, and you're going to walk out of here. He said, I could sell you a car today, but I'm not going to help you. He said, you need to walk out of here, and you need to pay off that car. And that man changed my life. I don't know his name. I couldn't even pick him out of a lineup right now, but I'll never forget what he said, because he changed my life. And I got my act together, and we got debt free with long before Dave Ramsey. So a quick story, but that's just my story. So can you talk about Dave Ramsey and how, working there, if you're, and I don't know what, rules you have, again, unscripted. But what's it like working for Dave Ramsey, and how passionate are you about a story like mine? Because it did change my life.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, that's what drives us. That your story and stories like yours, that's what drives us. And it is actually truly amazing to work there. I've had a lot of jobs, and I'm glad I had a lot of those jobs. It's interesting how some of the young kids that are working there, this is their first job. They have no idea. They have no idea the way the real world is. They don't have any concept of being in a toxic workplace or one that's so competitive. And it just is such a team. I've never experienced anything like it, but I always wished that it was out there. And I started thinking, wow, Curt, you invented this. There is no such thing. But since I've been there, it really is. Of course, you have your days where you're like, I don't want to deal with debt-free people. It's a job, right? But for the most part, the culture is just unbelievable. And it has been a breath of fresh air. And he actually writes about it in the book EntreLeadership. He writes about the way he created the culture. So I read the book long before I worked there. And what a pleasant surprise it is to be in a place where you read a book about it, and
Right.
and it's not fiction, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'll just give you one example. In the book, it talks about how a leader cannot let gossip in the building.
Right.
You will be fired if you gossip. And the cool part about that is Dave doesn't have to walk around being the gossip police. We police ourselves.
That's awesome.
And, people are people. You're going to talk. But the minute we cross that line or even come close to that line, we all check ourselves and go, okay, all right, let's talk about something that we can actually do today. And if we have a problem, let's talk about, going up to the next level and finding out who can help us with that. Instead of just sitting around a water cooler talking about how Aaron is screwing up this week. It does no good. It's a waste of time, right?
Yeah.
So
And
it's just been amazing. And my wife is super jealous because she turned me on to Dave Ramsey, and she can't work there because they don't hire spouses. So I got the job there and she didn't. And she's like, what is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, how did you get the job? So Polly got you the job, or
yeah, well, I worked at Thomas Nelson, and Thomas Nelson is the publisher of the Total Money Makeover, which is Dave's biggest book.
Right.
And so I got to know the Ramsey organization. We'd have little meetings and a lot of phone calls, and I just got to know people there. And I thought, I wonder, would I ruffle feathers if I switched from the publisher actually over to Dave? Yeah. And so I applied, and a year or two went by and nothing happened. And I thought, well, I guess I'm never going to work there. And then I just got a call out of nowhere, and I had left Thomas Nelson by then. I got a call out of nowhere saying, you want to come over? And I was like, wow, it's been like 2 or 3 years, but okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. God's timing. All right. I'm going with it. So, and now I've been there 7 years.
Unbelievable. Man, has it been 7 years? When I was, so we've known each other probably 11, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that was the first time we met was when we had the night out, and then that became an annual thing for us. I told Heather, so for those listening, we used to go down and run the half marathon. Full in Nashville is insane. The half was bad enough as it was, but every year we would do that, honestly, with the goal of getting to Saturday night where we could go out with this group of people that we're all still friends to this day. Awesome. That we met through various ways. As crazy as that sounds, but the goal was the Saturday night. Finally, I said, why don't we just stop running the thing and just go down to Nashville and get dinner with everybody? Like,
right. There you go.
So I think, but it was a great time, and it's been a blessing. You've been a blessing to me. All the, 11 years, man, that's unbelievable.
I know it is
a blink. It's absolutely
great. But it's been really nice watching your family through social media, and this is really this is like the dream of what social media should be.
Right.
Instead of arguing over how horrible Trump is, we can watch each other's families grow up, and 100%. I know when you're going through something. I know it because you're so transparent, and I know when you're happy, and I know when work really excites you.
Yeah.
And I just know all that about you because of social media, and that is really what it should be. It should be a way to connect, even though it's technology and it's not, face to face and handshake. It's still, hey, it's safer this way, right? Social media. And it's really the way it really is yeah, exactly. So it's been awesome just watching you grow as a man and as a father. And when one of your kids got the age mine was, I was like, oh, I know exactly what he feels like right now.
Right.
So it's really been really cool.
Well, that's a really cool thing. And thank you for that. Cause I feel the same. I mean, watching, the girls go off and their adventures and it's really, I think there's a difference between social media and then real social media. Like what you're talking about. I think you got to know people, and because the people that I know, I just did a call earlier. So when if you do watch both of these, you'll see me wearing the same shirt. I don't wear it every day. I just literally am doing back-to-back calls.
It's a nice shirt.
What's that?
It's a great shirt.
Hey. No, but both of these calls have been people that I have met through the internet, as creepy as that sounds, I guess. But at the end of the day, we've stayed in touch, and we really know each other. Again, like I said earlier today, band of brothers. we've walked through things together. We've prayed together over text. You've sent me one, I've sent you one. We've walked through things, and for you to be able to pick up, and that's powerful. I'm not going to lie. For you to be able to pick up what I'm going through without me going through it online, because I don't put that online, but I might not necessarily put what I normally would put. And for you to catch that, man, that's powerful. And I think that's friendship. And so I give credit to you for that, because that's, I think the people I just sent a text today, earlier today, to somebody and said, "You good?" Because I could just tell, and I think that's the difference between following somebody and being a friend with somebody, like, on social media.
Right.
That's really good stuff, man. This is why it's unscripted. I love that. I'm going to take that with me for sure. I'm going to keep that. So let's thank you. So let's go to that. Let's talk about the girls. I was on an earlier call with somebody who has girls as well. As you know, I have two, and we talked about Kobe, and I wasn't always a Kobe fan. I actually became a Kobe fan in the afterlife, and maybe that's going to be true of all of us. At least I hope it is, that you leave a legacy like he did in the afterlife of his death. But the girl dad thing, I think, got us all, if we have girls. So, man, talk to me about being a girl dad. And for a girl dad, you have twins. So talk to me about having twins and being a girl dad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're everything, they're 20 now, and I've got one in the Navy, and I've got one still at home. She spent a year in college, and now she's back attending college locally. And that was great. I mean, it was like, people were like, "Are you bummed out you were an empty nester for 9 months?" And I'm like, heck no. I was like welcoming her back. Please come back.
Yeah.
But I know I have to let go. I know, but it's just, the house feels different. It really does when they're not here. So, it comes with all kinds of worries, especially the one in the Navy, because she's on her own and I can't protect her. Ironically, she's protecting me. She's protecting all of us.
Right.
And, as a dad, that is tough, because you want to be there. You want to be there and shelter them from everything. But of course, I've got just massive pride for both of them, and I love everything about them. I love their shortfalls. I love their failures. I love their successes. And I just root for them. And, you talk about Dave Ramsey. My daughter wanted a new car, the one in the Navy. Emily, she wanted a new car, and she called me and said, "Dad, things are not good here right now with COVID." A lot of people don't think of the military. COVID has been horrible for the military. There are ships that have been out at sea for over 200 days because they're trying to be safe. And being on a ship with all these people for 200 days is actually, it becomes suicidal for some sailors. It's much worse than being here in the COVID. It's been very tough on the military. And my daughter was pretty distraught this night. And she said, "I just want a new car. I don't like what I'm driving." And I was trying to find the connection. I'm like, okay, so you're not happy right now. Things are kind of tough. You can't come home. You feel isolated, but you're equating that to wanting a car.
Right.
And she said, "Yes, because my car is terrible and it stranded me, and I got a flat tire," which new cars get flat tires too.
Right.
But, in her mind though, and I remember being that age, so my first reaction was, no, forget that. All you're trying to do is buy your way out of some kind of trouble or whatever. But she laid out the plan, and she said, I could get a loan. I could get a loan and I could pay it off in a year and a half if I do this and this. And she had a plan, and it is against all of the principles that we teach. It's against everything that I now believe. But I put myself back when I was that age, and I said, she's going to be in this car, not a new car, but a new car to her. She's going to be in this car, and that's like her respite. She can leave her roommate. She can leave the ship. She can be on her own in this car that makes her happy, eating Taco Bell or whatever kids do. And she had a plan. She was like, "Dad, I make this amount and I can pay it off." And she's staying true to it. She's paying $500 a month on a car that's only $160 a month. And it's going to be paid off in, 12, 13, 14 months. So when she called me though, she was so scared that I was going to just just like rip into her plan, and that the Dave Ramsey in me was going to come out, and I was going to be like, you are not going to get a car loan ever. Yeah. And I just said to her, honey, I'm here to listen to you. You are now an adult. You're 20 years old. What you're going to do, you're going to do. Right. I'm your friend at this point. Let me just tell you what 3 options you have. You could go ahead and get that car. You could keep the one you have and save up a lot of money and go in and pay cash for that car. And I just laid it out. And I said, but I'm not going to tell you which one to do. I'm just going to tell you what I would do if you're asking.
Yeah.
But you're not asking, you want that, so go for it. And I think that was a real turning point for us, because Megan listened to this conversation too, and she was like, okay, so dad is not going to put the hammer down necessarily. He's just going to give you options and say, look, I'm going to love you either way. But here's the truth, and here's how the truth, as I see it. You're 20 years old, make a decision.
Right.
And real breakthrough. But long story to say, I love them, and no matter what they do, it's awesome.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Right. I mean, that's it's just part of it, and it's the greatest joy in my life. I could lose everything, but those 3 and my wife. You know, you can have the rest of it. I don't. You know, I know the world's in chaos right now. You touch those 3 and my wife, we're gonna have a problem. Otherwise, man, I'm good. Honestly, I could lose it all, and I'm good. Absolutely.
It really is amazing how when you start to really look at all that you've accomplished in your life and all the things that God has worked in your life, and you end up saying, what if my purpose was just to have them?
Yep.
You know,
I believe it's scriptural. I mean, God gave them to us for a reason. You know? Yeah. They're all unique, and they're all. It's the best. It's absolutely.
It really is.
But what you said, my mom used to have a phrase that I hated growing up. I mean, I would ask her, you know, Mom, in your example, could I buy a car? You know, I want to buy this car. And she would say, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or do you want me to tell you the truth? And I always knew it was because the truth wasn't what I wanted to hear. And that was her way of saying, man, I'm totally against whatever it is you're thinking of.
Yeah.
And so I'd always say the truth, you know, and then walk away, tail between my legs. But yeah, I hated that phrase. So, man, this is going too fast. We got to do this more often, and maybe we don't have to do it where we record it. But a couple things real quick before we jump into 80s music, because we gotta cover 80s music.
Absolutely.
What is your site? And is your social media, any contact information? Because I'm sure after hearing this, whether it's one person or 1,000 people, again, you and I stopped watching stats a long time ago. I don't do it for that. But I do put it out there. So if there is somebody that wants to get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
All right. It's just easy. It's CurtHarding.com, and that's CURT, CurtHarding.com. You can find everything there. Email addresses, the book is on there. Any kind of way to get a hold of me is right there. So that's it. And I'm on Twitter too, at Curt Harding. So
yes, he is.
You can find me there too.
Typically, or you could just look at either one of our streams, because you'll see the song, an 80s song, and then equals brilliant. And then
brilliant.
Either Curt or at Aaron, one of the two. So let's talk about that before we get out of here, because we got like 1 or 2 minutes.
All right.
80s music, man. Today's music. What's happening? I mean, come on.
I don't know.
80s music.
So I'm an old FM DJ. That's how I got started in broadcasting. So in the 90s, I was an FM DJ and then a club DJ, and that's how I met my wife. She was a bartender and I was a DJ.
I didn't know that.
Yes, that's how we met. And so there I was jamming, you know, Salt and Pepper, Push It, and she's down there serving drinks. That's where we were. But 80s music is the best. There's nothing better. I'm so grateful that I grew up when MTV started. Right. I mean, we used to run home from school to see the latest Michael Jackson video, or remember when AHA came out with the one with the black and white, the cartoon? Oh, I mean, come on. Exactly. Yes. So yeah, it's still a thing with me. I basically skipped the 90s, which is interesting, because now I listen to some 90s music and I go, that wasn't bad. I was still in the 80s.
Right. But I tell you, but I do have a bone to pick with you. You don't like Tracy Chapman.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah.
Because I could have sworn that you said you didn't like Tracy Chapman. I'm like,
oh, no. She's one of my go-tos. You're thinking of somebody. There's another bald guy in your life.
There's a lot.
Well,
Unfortunately,
that's another
Jason
show.
Chapman was the bomb. I mean, honestly, that first one, next level. Honestly, there's nothing better. Nothing
Yeah,
better.
the Promise is my favorite song. It's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah.
Oh.
Or the cover. See, now we're going to get into a whole people just hit stop, or people are gone. It's just me and you talking.
This
No,
is awesome. So this woman sits behind me in the cube behind me at Ramsey, and she goes, "I heard that you were a DJ. When were you a DJ?" And I go, that would have been 1989. She goes, "Oh, I was born in 96." I was like, "Oh."
sweet.
You missed it all. You
Right,
missed it all.
right.
But thanks
It
for
goes too
making me feel
fast.
like an old guy. Yeah.
It goes too, like our time today. It goes too fast. We got to do this again. We need to probably just do it and not record it. But man, thank you for being on. Thank you for being so positive. Always, always.
Thanks.
I've never heard you say a negative thing, even on social media and Twitter. I don't ever see you say anything negative in the culture and time that we're in. I've never seen a tweet from you that was negative. And that takes skill, because just reading the social media, you want to respond, or you want to not join in, but it just, man, it gets you going. And so thank you for being you, for being a storyteller, for being so positive, and for being on. I really appreciate it. And I know it's going to bless somebody else, just like those posts you write.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. This is really a lot of fun. Let's do it a lot.
All right, man. All right. Tell Pauline and the girls I said hi, and we love you. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. See ya.
Bye.